Think about that for a second. 45 years, Leeds have been waiting to win a league game at Old Trafford. And last night, we gave it to them. Not just gave it to them, we gift wrapped it, put a bow on it, handed it over in the first half before most fans had even finished their pies. And what makes this hurt even more is that it didn't have to be this way at all. This wasn't a team that came to Old Trafford and outplayed us. This wasn't a tactically superior side that exposed us with brilliance. This wasn't a tactically superior side that exposed us with brilliance, but they did it. And that is the conversation we need to have today. Because if we just talk about the red card, if we just talk about Okafor's goals, if we just say bad night, move on, then we're not being honest. And I don't do that here. I'm Bella. If you're new here, this channel is for people who actually think about football, not just react to it. We go deeper, we ask the uncomfortable questions. And if that sounds like your kind of content, hit subscribe right now because you're going to want to be here for the rest of this season. It is going to be a ride. Right, let's get into it. Because here's the thing that nobody seems to want to say clearly. The first half last night was one of the worst halves of football I have seen from this United side in a long time. Under Carrick, under Amorim, under any of them, that first half was alarming. And I want to explain why, not just describe it, explain it, because there's a reason it happened. And that reason is important. It starts with the lineup. Now look, I understand Carrick was without Manuo. Cobby picked up a minor training injury in the week, and that's a huge blow because Manu isn't just a midfielder. Manu is the engine that makes this midfield make sense. He's the one who moves between the lines, who connects defence to attack, who actually drives the team forward with intelligence. Take him out and suddenly there's a hole in the structure that you cannot just plug with anybody. So what did Carrick do? He started Manuel Ugarte, and I need to talk about this. I really need to talk about this because this is not a new conversation. This is a conversation that keeps coming back. Ugarte has now started 10 league games this season, 10. And United have won one of them. One. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. And before anyone says it's not all Ugarte's fault, I know it's not all on him. But think about what Ugarte actually does in a game. Think about his role. He's supposed to be the anchor, the screen in front of the defence, the player who sits, wins the ball back and recycles it simply so the more creative players can do their thing. That is his job. Simple job. A vital job. Last night he lost the ball 11 times. 11. He had one progressive carry, and he gave away 2 fouls in dangerous areas. That is not a holding midfielder doing his job. That is a liability. And the moment you have a liability in the holding midfield position, everything behind him becomes exposed. Yoro is suddenly vulnerable, Martinez is suddenly vulnerable, the whole defensive structure starts to crack, and Leeds knew it. That's the part that really gets me. Daniel Farke set his team up to press Ugarte specifically. They knew he would be playing, they knew he was the weak link, and they went for him. Now here's the part nobody is really talking about. Carrick had Mbeumo available, Dalot available. He chose to leave both of them on the bench from the start, and I understand rotation, I understand squad management, but this wasn't a cup game with a second leg 3 days later. This was a league game at home, top 4 on the line against a relegation-threatened side who were coming into our ground with momentum from a massive cup win the week before. That was not the time to rotate your way into trouble. And I think Carrick knows that. I genuinely do. Because when he brought Dalot and Mbeumo on at 70 minutes, the team immediately looked better, more structured, more threatening, which tells you everything about the cost of not starting them. But okay, let's talk about the goals, because the goals are where this gets really painful. First goal. 5 minutes into the game, cross comes in from the right side. Leny Yoro and Calvert-Lewin go up for the aerial ball together. Yoro doesn't win it. The ball drops. Okafor reacts instantly, finishes calmly. 1-0. Now, I want to focus on Yoro here because there is a conversation building around this kid that I think is getting a little too harsh, but I also think needs to be honest. Leny Yoro is 19 years old. He is a teenager. He is still learning, and that needs to be said. But, and this is important, he cannot keep getting bullied in aerial duels. He has the physical tools. He's tall. He's athletic. He's quick. But there's a mental side to aerial defending that you can't rush. It's about positioning, anticipation, reading when to attack the ball and when to hold your ground. And right now, Calvert-Lewin, a proper centre-forward who lives for those battles, exposed that. The second goal was worse, not because of Okafor's finish. The finish was brilliant, a volley on the half-turn, but the build-up, Yoro again, gives the ball away in midfield. Leeds break. The ball ends up with Aronson, who gets his 6th Premier League assist of the season, by the way. Let that sink in. And Okafor volleys it in. 2-0. First half, 29 minutes. And here's what I kept thinking watching this back. Where was the protection? Where was Ugarte in both of those moments? Because a proper holding midfielder covers those situations. He's the one who tracks the runner, who intercepts the transition, who gives the centre-backs cover when they step out or lose the ball. That protection was absent, and when that protection is absent, one mistake by a teenager leads directly to a goal. That's the structural problem, and it's a problem that won't fix itself. Tell me if you see this differently. Drop it in the comments, because I want to know if United fans genuinely think this midfield balance is something that can be solved from within the current squad, or whether the summer is absolutely critical, because for me, the summer is critical. But we'll get to that. Let's talk about Lisandro Martinez, because this is complicated, and I want to be fair here. Martinez came back from a calf injury for this game, 5 games out. He wasn't fully sharp, you could see that. His positioning in the first half was slightly off. He was a fraction slow to react to a couple of situations, and that happens when you come back from injury. Your body is there, your instincts aren't quite at 100% yet, and then 56th minute, VAR spots something, referee goes to the monitor, reviews it, shows the red card for pulling Dominic Calvert-Lewin's hair. Now, was it violent conduct? Technically, under the rules, yes. Intentional contact with an opponent using unnecessary aggression, hair pulling falls under that. I'm not going to sit here and pretend the rule doesn't exist. It does, and Martinez grabbed his ponytail, that is a fact, but here's where I get frustrated. And Carrick basically said the same thing after the game. The inconsistency, the absolute inconsistency in how these decisions get made. We've all seen worse on a football pitch that gets a yellow card or nothing at all. And yet Lisandro Martinez, who had just made an incredible last-ditch tackle on Tanaka earlier in the half, a tackle that saved us from going 3-0 down, gets sent off for a hair pull that, let's be honest, caused no injury, affected no play, and was more stupid than malicious. Carrick called it one of the worst decisions he's ever seen, and I don't think that's just a manager protecting his player. I genuinely think there's a legitimate grievance there, but here is the consequence, and this is what keeps me up at night about this. If the red card is upheld and for violent conduct, the ban is 3 games. Martinez misses Chelsea, Brentford and potentially Liverpool. 3 of our most important games of the season, 3 games where we need to be at our absolute strongest defensively, and we're going into them already without Maguire, who is also suspended and facing an FA charge on top of that, and De Ligt, who is injured. So let me paint that picture clearly. Best case scenario for Chelsea, Euro and Aiden Heaven at centre-back. Aiden Heaven, who is a promising young player, absolutely, but who is barely featured at senior Premier League level at Stamford Bridge against a Chelsea side fighting for the same top 4 position. That is a real problem, a real serious problem. And this is where I think the conversation about this squad's depth has to come to a head, because what happened last night wasn't just about a bad performance. It was about the reality of what this squad actually is right now. Thin, dangerously thin. The moment you lose 2 or 3 players to injury or suspension in key positions, the drop in quality is dramatic. That is not acceptable for a club of this size. Now here's the part of last night that I want to give full credit to, because it's easy to only talk about what went wrong. The second half with 10 men, 2 goals down, United were better, genuinely better, and that matters. Casemiro, 34 years old. There are moments when I watch Casemiro and I just think, this man understands football on a level that most players never reach. He drifted into the right space, read Bruno's cross perfect, headed it into the net like a man who has done it 1,000 times, because he has. And then he had another header cleared off the line by Calvert-Lewin, who I have to say had an absolutely complete game last night. He bullied Euro aerially, he pressured Martinez into the red card, he made a goal line clearance, he was everywhere. Credit where it's due, but back to the 10-man United performance, because this is where it gets interesting. Something shifted in the second half. The urgency was there. The pressing was better. The movement was more purposeful. Bruno started finding pockets of space. Sesko, who had been largely invisible in the first half, started to threaten with his physicality. Darlow had to make 6 saves total, 6, including a point-blank stop from Sesko in the closing minutes. And that tells me something. It tells me this squad can respond under pressure with their backs against the wall. They responded, but, and this is a big but, why does it take a crisis for that intensity to arrive? Why does it take going 2-0 down and losing a man? That first half should not have looked like what it looked like. The sharpness, the energy, the press, all of that should have been there from minute 1. 24 days without a game. That's been mentioned. And look, I think there's something to that. Coming back from a long break without competitive rhythm is genuinely difficult. Your match sharpness is off. The instinctive decisions that you normally make in a split second take a fraction longer, and at the top level that fraction is everything. But I also think it's a mental thing. I think some players came into last night slightly too relaxed. Leeds at home, relegation threatened. Just back from a long break, easy 3 points, right? No, football doesn't work like that, and experienced players should know that. Carrick touched on this after the game. He spoke about needing to find that intensity from the first minute, and you could tell he was frustrated, not devastated, frustrated, which actually makes sense because this squad doesn't need a crisis of confidence right now. It needs clarity, and Carrick was doing his best to provide that without throwing individuals under the bus publicly. Which brings me to the question I want to ask you right now. Is Michael Carrick the right man to manage United beyond this season? Because here's how I see it, and I want to be really honest. What Carrick has done since coming in January has been genuinely impressive. The performances against City and Arsenal at the start of his reign were the best football I'd seen from this United team in a long time. The structure was there, the pressing was organised. The belief was visible. He came in and stabilised a sinking ship and navigated it to third place in the Premier League. That is real, that is not nothing. But last night exposed something, and that something is not necessarily about Carrick's tactical ability. It's about the gap between what this squad can do on a good day and what it becomes when things go wrong. That gap is too wide, and the question is whether a new permanent manager with a proper pre-season, a proper transfer window, a properly built squad could close that gap. I think the answer is yes. I think it has to be yes, because right now, United don't have a squad that can sustain a title challenge. They have a squad that can compete for top four. And Carrick has done a good job squeezing the most out of that squad. But next season has to be different. The ambition has to be bigger. And honestly, Harry Maguire, who signed a new one-year deal recently, said it best. He spoke about believing that with the right summer in the transfer market, United could be competing with City and Arsenal next season. And I actually agree with that framing. I think the bones are there. I think there are genuinely good players at this club. Bruno, Casemiro, who still has so much to offer. Ahmad on his day. Euro with a full pre-season of development. Sesko, who needs the right system to unlock him properly. But they need a midfield, a real midfield, with legs and brain and balance. And they need centre-backs who can defend without drama. And they need that holding midfielder question answered permanently because the Ugarte situation cannot continue into next season. Let me tell you what I think the summer needs to look like in one sentence. Real quality in defensive midfield, a centre-back who can dominate aerially, and creativity in behind the striker. That's the skeleton of a title-challenging team. Everything else is already there or close to it. Now, what about Leeds? Because I don't want to just make this about United's failures. Leeds deserve proper credit here. Noah Okafor, what a player he has been since coming in this window. Technically brilliant. 2 goals last night, both well taken, both instinctive. The first one was about reaction speed and composure. The second was about technique. A volley under pressure in a big game. That is not easy. That is quality. And what Farke has done with this Leeds team is remarkable when you zoom out. They came to Old Trafford without a Premier League goal since February, fighting relegation, everyone expecting them to park the bus and maybe nick a point. Instead, they pressed high, caused chaos in our midfield, exploited our defensive vulnerabilities brilliantly, and then defended their lead with everything they had in the second half. Karl Darlow, 35 years old, 6 saves, some of them absolutely crucial. The save from Sesko in the final minutes especially. That was the save that sealed the 3 points. He was immense. And for Leeds fans, this is a massive result. 6 points clear of the relegation zone, still in the FA Cup as semi-finalists. The momentum they have built in the last few weeks is real. If they stay up this season, and I think they will now, a lot of that will be because of what they did at Old Trafford last night. Back to United, because we need to talk about Saturday. Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, 18th of April, 8 p.m. BST. This is, and I say this without exaggeration, one of the biggest games of United's season. Chelsea are 7 points behind us in the table. A win for us essentially kills their top 4 hopes. A win for them closes the gap to 4 points with 5 games left. That changes everything, and we are going into that game right now, potentially without Martinez for 3 games, without Maguire, without De Ligt, without Mainu for certain, with a goalkeeper who is still finding his feet in this league. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't worry me. It does. It genuinely does. But here's what I keep coming back to. United with 10 men, 2-0 down, still found a way to create chances, still found a way to get a goal, still pushed until the final second. That spirit is real. That character is real. And you need that character going into a game at Stamford Bridge. The tactical setup for Chelsea has to be smart. If Euro and Heaven are the centre-back pairing, which it might be, you cannot afford to defend high up the pitch. You have to be compact. You have to let Chelsea have the ball in areas where they can't hurt you and then hit them on the break with pace. Bruno finding Sesko in behind, Mabumo in behind. That's the plan that works. Carrick has shown he can set up defensively and win away from home. The away win at City earlier this season, the performance at Arsenal, those were disciplined, intelligent performances. He can do it again. but he needs his players to be sharper from minute 1 than they were last night and Maino. Everything depends on whether Maino recovers in time for Saturday, because the difference between a United midfield with Maino and without Maino is dramatic. It's not close. It's a completely different team in terms of what they can do with the ball. So that's where we are, third in the table, 6 games left. Top 4 still very much in our hands, but with a fixture list and an injury situation that is going to test this squad to its absolute limit over the next 3 weeks. And for me, that's actually the most fascinating part of this whole situation, how Carrick navigates this, how he sets up against Chelsea with the resources available to him, who he trusts in the big moments, whether the team that showed up in the second half last night with heart, with fight, with genuine quality can show up from minute 1 at Stamford Bridge. That's the version of United I want to see. That's the version of United that belongs in the Champions League, not the first half version that got bullied by a relegation side, the second half version, the one that doesn't stop, the one that made Carl Darlow earn every clean sheet point he got. Last thing I want to say, the bigger picture here is real. This is a club in genuine transition. The stadium debate is ongoing. The summer transfer window is the biggest in years in terms of what it needs to achieve. The permanent manager question still hasn't been fully answered. There are so many moving parts, and moments like last night are part of that process, painful, frustrating, maddening parts of that process, but parts of it nonetheless. You don't build a club back to the very top in one season with one manager and one transfer window. You do it through exactly these kinds of nights. You learn from them, you use them. What I know is this squad has players in it worth believing in. This manager has shown he can get them to perform, and this club, for all its problems, is still in third place in the Premier League with 6 games to go. That is not nothing. That is something to fight for, so fight for it. Saturday, Chelsea. Let's see who this team really is. If you made it this far, you already know what to do. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Drop your rating of Carrick's performance last night in the comments, and tell me, do you think we finished top 4? Because I want to know where the faith levels are right now. I'm Bella. Thanks for watching. See you after Chelsea.